Hello, everyone, and welcome to CreamBetweens Part 2 of 2023. Last video was an hour long. We have 40 more films to get through. So let's just hunker down and get it done. Let's do it. Next film in the CreamBetweens is Are You There, God? It's Me, Margaret. This is a coming-of-age film, pretty classic, kind of the prototypical coming-of-age movie. It is about puberty. It's about hitting puberty. But this is, what does this take place in the 70s, I think? Something like that. And it's just really well done. It's like what a lot of people have pointed out about this movie that is very, very true. I didn't really recognize when I originally saw it, but then when I thought about it, it's like, oh yeah, that's why this movie works so well. Is because this movie really takes the perspective of a child, like somebody who's actually at this age. The way that they look at the world, the way that they think about things, the way that they process what's going on around them. The movie emulates that. It doesn't take the kind of cynical perspective of an adult. Like, you have so many coming of age movies that still have this adult understanding of things. This movie works so well because it actually thinks like somebody at this age. And yeah, it's just really well done. Rachel McAdams is amazing in this. I think she's nominated for an Oscar, which is good because she was flippin' awesome. She's underutilized. She's completely underutilized in Hollywood. Moving on, we have The Boy and the Heron from Mr. Miyazaki himself. Now, I know what you're thinking. 3 stars. What? I don't know if you've seen this movie or not, but this movie is a bit wild. It's a bit esoteric. It doesn't make any sense. And look, there's 2 types of Miyazaki films for all I'm concerned, you know. There's the crazy throw shit at the wall, everything that you can, creativity movie, i.e. Spirited Away, right? Princess Mononoke is a little bit like that, but I feel like it's a bit more controlled. Yeah, you have movies like that. And then you have like the very classic fable, chill, very restraint, quaint artistry movie. Something like My Neighbor Totoro, or the last one they did, the wind. Can't remember the name. It has to do with the wind. That one's really good. This movie is a throw shit at the wall, and it's just completely esoteric, and I didn't really get much out of it at all. I can see why people would really like that. They don't really care if they don't understand it. I don't know, like, how am I supposed to feel about this? You know, I don't know. That's how I feel about it. Next is Viking. This is a French-Canadian film. It's interesting because, like, there's some characters in this who speak a lot more English than others. Like, they're clearly American, but they also speak French. It's strange. It's strange. Because, like, most of it takes place in America. Even though they're, like, kind of in the middle of nowhere, it takes place in America. Anyway, this is a really difficult concept to pull off, what this movie's trying to do. And it does it in the right way. It does it in a comedic way, which was the correct choice. And that's where this movie works the best, is when it's embracing its comedy. It's embracing its complete ridiculousness. That's when it does well. When it doesn't do well is when it's trying to be this artistic thing it tries to be a bit transcendent when I think what it's forgetting is the fact that it's not transcendent, it's the opposite. Anyway, I think this is a really, really cool concept that I haven't seen done before. And like I said, when the comedy is there, it's gold. But maybe trying a bit too hard. Next is American Fiction. A lot of people haven't seen this. If I was somebody who wanted to see this movie and I didn't live in like New York or LA, I'd be really pissed off because this movie was supposed to come out the 15th. That's what it said on every single release schedule, that it's coming out the 15th. I think Zone of Interest said that too. I don't know, but this one for sure. I saw this because AMC has this AMC Screen Unseen thing where you can pay $5 to see a movie that hasn't come out yet, and it comes out in like 1 to 2 weeks, but you don't know what it is. It's a mystery. And so I love that type of thing. I love going to something completely blind, knowing nothing about it, not even knowing what I'm going to see. I love that. And so this was the first time I went to one of those. And yeah, they played American Fiction. And it was supposed to come the 15th, and it never came. Apparently it's releasing a week from now. So I saw this at the end of November, so it's been over a month since I've seen this. But anyway, I liked it I liked it. Look, what it's doing with the racial commentary, I think it's something that isn't necessarily all that radical. I think white people eat this shit up because they're like, oh, that's what I've been saying. And like white liberals are like, ah, yes, my fellow black people. I don't know. Like, I just feel like this is made for white people. The racial commentary part. But what do I know? Right? What do I know? But then the most interesting part of this movie is that it's kind of a family drama, a tender family drama disguised as like a satire on race. I mean, that's certainly part of it, but the family drama takes the center stage by the end of the movie. And I think that's really interesting. It's a really interesting choice. And the family drama was engaging, but I'm not necessarily sure if that kind of subversion works. Because I was just really confused on what the movie was actually doing. But I appreciate it, and I would be lying if I said I didn't enjoy it. So, yeah. All right, next we have Linoleum. This is a nice little family drama starring Jim Gaffigan of comedy fame, and I've seen him in quite a few things. He actually does a really good job in everything I've seen him in. And he's accompanied by Rhea Seehorn from Better Call Saul. And yeah, this is just a bit of a confusing film at first, but when it ends, you kind of put things together, and my God, this is probably one of the sweetest, most touching films of the year. Unfortunately, the film kind of does this Nolan-esque emotional montage at the end with a bunch of epic revelations that I don't think necessarily work. It's a bit corny, and it feels like budget restrictions, if anything, because it just fucking dumps all of this information at the very end in a very short amount of time. But again, looking back on the movie, this is such a sweet movie, a monumentally sweet film. And I feel like if it was just maybe done better, this might be one of my favorite movies of the year. But I just wanted to shout it out because I think it's worth seeing. Next is Smoking Causes Coughing. This is from a multifaceted artist named Quentin Dupois, who's done a few absurdist comedy films that I've seen, and I typically like them quite a bit. I think he started in music, and then he's just done this absurdist comedy thing for a while, and it's worked out great because he's about to make another film with a pretty all-star French cast that I'm very excited about. But this one, it has these characters in this Power Ranger-esque tobacco force. They're like pro-cigarettes or something. And they fight monsters that explode when they're defeated, and gore and guts go everywhere. So that's fun. That's like the first leg of the movie. And then they tell campfire stories. That's the best part about the movie, in my opinion. Excuse me. And it ends with them thinking the world is going to end, and then it doesn't. And then that's the movie. And these films aren't trying to say anything. They aren't like, I don't know. They're just fucking weird. They're fucking weird, and they're funny. And I enjoy them quite a bit. We're actually at the first number 7 on the list. We're at the 7. So yeah, we're going to move on from there. All right, next we have Missing. This is a follow-up to the film Searching. It's not really a sequel. It's just, a next iteration in the same concept. And that concept is using phone screens, tablet screens, computer screens to tell an entire thriller, which is a really interesting concept, but it seems like something that would be either boring or just confusing, or it just doesn't work. But let me tell you, this is fantastic. I've watched some thrillers this year, and this movie is on par with how much tension and excitement there was with, other traditional thrillers. That's so impressive. And it's kind of a symphony of digital noise and imagery. It's pretty amazing. The only part I would really say is a gripe is that the story at the center, it kind of adheres to some sentimentality that I don't think really works. But other than that, great film. Next, we have All the Beauty and the Bloodshed. This is the Oscar winner for the Best Documentary Feature Film, and I liked it all right. I had learned about the whole Sackler family ordeal with that series that came out last year called Dope Sick, which I don't remember what streaming service it was on. But so this is a film about a woman who's protesting against the Sackler family because she was a victim of the OxyContin kind of epidemic. And it's also a documentary about her life as this young kind of counterculture, no wave artist. So it was interesting seeing the two different sides. I didn't think this film was necessarily incredible, but it was a really good documentary. Next we have Divinity. This is a film that nobody saw, and it was only in the theater for a week. It was produced by Soderbergh, so that's probably the only reason why it made it to a theater. But nobody saw it. And it's this kind of odd science fiction movie that for the first 30 minutes, it's so ambiguous and avant-garde and weird. And it has this wild world building that's going on. And it reminded me so much of going into a game like a FromSoft game, like Elden Ring or Bloodborne, and just being thrown into this world that you don't even know how to comprehend when you're first thrown into it. And I love that feeling of exploration and kind of the unknown. And that's what the first 30 minutes of this film was like. If this whole runtime was like that, this would probably be one of my favorite movies of the year, because it captures that feeling so well. Then it kind of devolves into this plot that I didn't really care all that much about, but first 30 minutes, fucking excellent. And it makes so much sense that this reminded me of video games, because this was made by a former game developer, Eddie Alcazar. And he's kind of definitely taking some game development type strategies into making films, which is really, really cool. So moving on from there, we have The Quiet Girl. This is an Irish film that is in Irish. Really good coming of age story. You don't see many films at all in Irish. The Irish language is slowly coming back. I went to Ireland this year. I saw it firsthand. I talked to people who were talking about the Irish language and stuff like that. Just really cool film to see. Yeah. Next is 1001. Just a very what's the word I'm looking? Immersive film that takes place in like deep New York City, like deep NYC. And it's the story of this mother who is trying to get her son back from Child Protective Services, or some child welfare organization, and because she's had a troubled past, but you can definitely tell she's doing better, and she really wants what's best for this boy. And so she, in the eyes of the law, she technically kidnaps him, but she's able to, change his name, change his identity, and kind of get away from it. And she raises him, up until he's like a late teenager. And that's what this film kind of shows. And there is a wild thing that happens at the end of this film that is just, I'm definitely not going to spoil, but wow, one of the most shocking moments of the year. So moving on from that, we have Woman of the Photographs. This is a Japanese film that I had no idea was from 2023. It was from 2020. It came out in Japan in 2020. And I guess I just had it on my watch list for a while, and it showed up on, one of my streaming, and I was like, okay, yeah, I'll watch that. And then I realized, oh, this was released in the US this year. Cool. All right. This is about a guy who meets this influencer girl. Like, she takes pictures of herself on Instagram. And this guy is like a mute, very socially awkward. I think he's like afraid of women too. And this girl injures herself. And when she starts taking pictures, when she starts having this guy who's like a photographer start taking pictures of him with injuries on her body, she starts getting more attention. And so there's like this really strange dynamic of this guy who's like, a complete outcast, doesn't talk, afraid of women. There's this girl who wants him to take pictures of her and constantly injuring herself. It's a really well thought out theme, because it's complex. And I really connected to this movie on a lot of levels, and I feel like a lot of people can. Really underseen. Nobody's seen this movie. Check it out. Woman of the Photographs. Next is Hidden Blade. This is a Chinese film that's set around World War II in China. And I had almost no knowledge of China's role in World War II. If you didn't know, imperialist Japan established a puppet state in China that was supposed to be representative of China, but it's just the interest of Japan. And so this movie is about spies that have the interests of the Chinese people. And so they're in this puppet state, and you have these two characters who I honestly, I don't even remember if they know each other or not, but they're kind of so in character as spies that they end up doing things that you wouldn't expect. I'm not going to, spoil anything about it, but that's the premise of the movie. This is a really fascinating film historically because it doesn't hold your hand. It's not made for an American audience. It's made for a Chinese audience. So really interesting on that front. And it's absolutely gorgeous. One of the better looking films of the year. So check it out, Hidden Blade. It's on Amazon Prime, I believe. So yeah. Next is Sick of Myself. This is from the same director that brought us Dream Scenario, one of my least favorite movies of 2023. And this is a much, much better film about narcissism. And I'm going to talk about this movie for a second because I think this new found obsession with making art and specifically movies about narcissism in Norway and other Scandinavian countries to be really fascinating, because obviously the world is becoming more narcissistic because of social media. That's no surprise to anybody, and there's plenty of art and movies about that. But what makes Scandinavians' take on it so interesting is because they literally have like an unspoken law that's, people have kind of lived by, and the way that their country is run is kind of reflective of this social standard, and that's called janteloven. And it's basically like these series of, law is kind of a weird word to put it. It's just kind of like a thing to think about, like to check yourself. Like it's like you are not to think you are better than anybody else. You are not to think you are smarter. You are not to think blah, 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 And so if you find yourself, having the superiority complex or just being too self-indulgent, it's like, oh shit, I need to like chill the fuck out, right? And what's interesting is that there has been a growing youthful rejection of the concept of janteloven in Scandinavian countries. Like there's literally fucking punk songs that are saying like funk janteloven. And so to have a film about narcissism from a country that has adhered to these kind of social norms for so long that is completely against narcissism is just fascinating to me. And this film is fucking hilarious. It's a great satire about narcissism, but it's way better than Dream Scenario, which is a little bit about narcissism in a way. It's way better than The Worst Person in the World, which I think, again, I've talked about this movie in the past. I think it's a well-made film. I think it's a good film, but its take on narcissism is just completely fucked. It's like the Scandinavian embrace of narcissism, and I don't agree with it. I think like they were doing it right beforehand, but this makes narcissism look fucking disgusting, and I love it. So check out Sick of Myself. Really funny, really fascinating. Yeah. Next is The Killer. That's not the theme song. I just made that up. This is from ya boy David Fincher, starring Michael Fassbender. A match made in heaven, because Michael Fassbender is this character in this movie. I mean, the perfect casting. And this movie was misunderstood when it first came out, and it's been talked to death now, and so people kind of get the whole gist of it. I, on the other hand, I got it from the very get-go. Not because I'm some fucking David Fincher fanatic or I'm smarter than everybody else. No. It's because I was a Mank hater. I didn't like Mank a lot. So when I watched this movie, I'm like, all right, this is post-Mank cinema. So, Mank was a miss for me. Get into the movie. Michael Fassbender plays this character that's extremely meticulous. David Fincher much? And he's a hitman, and he misses his target. It couldn't be more obvious. So I got that from the very get-go. I thought it was funny. I thought it was the character interactions between the different targets is very fascinating. And I thought it was great, but I don't think it's as good as people say that it is, because they have that revelation that, oh, this is about David Fincher. And it's like, directors have done this before, like 1,000 times. And so I think it's fantastic, but I wasn't like crazy about it. So yeah, I'm just glad David Fincher isn't doing another Mank. So I'm just happy about that. Next is The Holdovers, another film that has been fucking talked to death, and people love it. And I'm glad people love it, because this is a great movie. It is. I think the heartwarming quality it has, the jolly Christmas, cozy feeling it has, the unexpected friendship at the center of this film. It's all great. It's wonderful. Awesome. Really enjoyed it. The problem I have with this movie is that nobody would be talking about this movie as much as they are if this wasn't made by Alexander Payne. He just happens to be a director that has a reputation, that has, done things in the past that have gotten him attention, to be honest with you, this is the first Alexander Payne movie I've seen. I don't know fucking shit about him, but I've heard people talk about him like, oh, Alexander Payne. It's like, this movie could have been made by anyone, so I don't know, that bothers me a little bit, but still, great film. I saw it twice. I saw it when it came out. I showed it to my parents around Christmas time, and it's the perfect Christmas movie. Crowd pleaser, just a winner. Great movie. Next is Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning. Another entry into this great franchise. It's always a good hit to center left field that hits the back wall, and somebody scores a run. I wouldn't call it a home run every time, but it's the previous play that I just described. They're always great. And this is just another great entry to the franchise. It does have the Part 1 syndrome, a little bit like Spider-Verse had, but it's not as egregious. I feel like it wraps up, it does feel like a complete package in a way. Of course, it's just the full story hasn't been completely told. So, great, Dead Reckoning, awesome. Next is The Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. Of course, like many people my age, when I was in middle school and early high school, I liked The Hunger Games. I saw The Hunger Games. I read the books. I saw the movies, and you look back on it when you get older and you're like, oh yeah, I enjoyed that. And then I'm not going to say I dislike it, but it's probably not as good. You grow older, you become more cynical, more jaded, you understand the world better. And so then you look back at this media you used to consume that you thought was subversive, and it's just kind of surface level, but not The Hunger Games. I saw this movie and I was blown away by how in detail this film was, and it made me think back about the other movies and kind of revisit them a little bit. And I'm like, these movies are so good. The fact that these movies are even as popular as they are, it makes sense considering the pop culture-ness of them, and it's just a good, interesting concept. But my God, this movie and the other movies are so fucking reflective. It's not like it's doing dystopia for the first time, but good Lord, it's accurate. And for something that's, a more recent event that's been going on for quite a while, this film could have not come at a more timely moment, So, yeah, just really great. Hunger Games, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, a complex film, especially that's aimed at, teenagers. But all right, next is Tommy Guns. This is from a Portuguese Angolan director, and it is about Portugal's colonial past in Angola, something I've never seen put to any type of medium or talked about really at all. Of course, so many of those African nations had revolutions. They broke free of their, colonizers. And this movie's about that. But man, let me tell you, this has one of the craziest twists I have seen this whole year. There was a lot of good twists this year. There's a lot of good. I feel like that's something I've been missing for a while. This year really filled that gap for me. This has a insane twist at the end, and this movie's very weird. It's very out there. It can be it can feel long for sure. But this is one of the most promising and interesting projects that I've seen this year from a very new filmmaker. And again, this has not been seen by anybody, so go and seek it out. It's great. Next is Knock at the Cabin, the M. Night Shyamalan movie. Ooh. Yep, M. Night Shyamalan is back. He's making, this time, a great little psychological thriller. I did not like Old. I've even seen it again since, and I still don't like it that much. This movie, however, I just think it's solid. I think it hits all the right notes. I think its thematic explorations are really interesting. They don't reach too far, but they don't say too little. It's just a well-made film, so good on you, M. Night Shyamalan. I thoroughly enjoyed this movie. Next, we have a little bit of a double entry here. We have Rimini and Sparta. So these are two films by a filmmaker named Ulrich Seidel. He is an Austrian filmmaker that I've seen quite a few movies by. He had this trilogy called the Paradise Trilogy, which I thought was excellent. He was originally a documentary filmmaker that had very challenging subjects. And then it came to a point where he just started making his own narrative films, but they almost feel like documentaries, just by the way that they're filmed and how real they feel. They feel so real. It's like there's no way these aren't real people. And they're always about just really scummy, morally bankrupt people. And he somehow it's never like hand-holdy in a way where it's like, oh, this is the good in these people. Here, I'm here. Look here. This is the good. He does it in a way where you yourself have to find the good in these people. That's not the point of these movies or anything, but that just ends up happening every time. And it's not like they're doing anything good. They're just existing, but you somehow find the good in these people. And these two movies, one, Rimini, is about this. It's about two brothers. I forget their names, but two brothers whose father is like this really old vegetable of a guy who is a Nazi, and he's like just jamming out to Nazi tunes in his nursing home. And these two brothers, one of them in Rimini, he's this pop singer, dude who like sings to old people. Apparently this is an actual thing in Austria and Germany. It's these old folks who like this very specific, like glamorous pop ballad singers. And so he's basically just rizzing up old people. And he's like a male prostitute that sings. But then his estranged daughter comes back into his life. And she keeps asking him for money. And she fucking hates him. But she just wants money from him. And so that's the premise there. And next is Sparta, which is about the other brother who is a pedophile. He tries to repress it. He doesn't. He's clearly uncomfortable in his own skin. He has a girlfriend who he just doesn't really show a lot of interest in. And so he ends up going to like Romania or something. And he out of the old like rundown elementary school, he makes like this little camp for young boys to like practice self-defense skills like martial arts, and they like dress up in little Spartan uniforms and stuff. And it's clear that he's like preying on them in a voyeuristic way. He never does anything, but you can tell the intentions are pedophilic, and so it's really fucking uncomfortable to watch this movie. It's so fucking uncomfortable. But then you kind of start to realize that he's treating these young boys better than their actual parents. Like, their parents are these like drunks who like abuse them and whatever. And so it's just this really uncomfortable dynamic that it's really hard to like anybody. And these kids are just kind of caught in the middle of it. And if that sounds challenging to you, it is. And no, I don't think any other filmmaker can make a film like this other than Ulrich Seidel. So if that sounds something you'd want to watch, Sparta. Next is Monster. This is a Japanese film from Koreeda Hirokazu, who I saw another film by, which we're going to talk about in just a second, from the same year. It was earlier in the year, but this one I saw later in the year. And this is a film that is told in 3 parts. It's like the same series of events that are told from 3 different perspectives. And there seems to be a growing trend of new wavy type filmmaking by messing with timelines. And of course, I know East Asian cinema has a history of, you know, Asian Japanese New Wave. You have Taiwanese New Wave, you know, that kind of thing. But there seems to be a lot of it as of recent, and I don't think it necessarily works here that well. I do like the fact that each perspective is kind of a critique of Japanese culture in a way, you know, on a really deep level. I do feel like once the film switches perspective, it feels like those characters are really left behind after we've grown to connect with them in a way, you know? And of course, the last leg of the film that takes perspective of the young boy, it is the most fleshed out, and that's what you see on the cover. It's like, that's the perspective of the boy on the cover. And while I enjoyed this story a lot, I feel like the ending, it has implications that aren't very constructive to me in terms of how it would translate to a critique, you know, or how it would translate to even like Japanese viewers in a way. I don't know. But with that being said, this is a beautiful film. It's a beautiful, beautiful movie. I just think it would be better if it didn't use that structure. I think it's a bit of a hindrance, but somebody could have a completely different opinion on that. So yeah, check it out if that sounds interesting to you. Very, very well made. Super. You could tell this is a master filmmaker for sure. Next is Oppenheimer. Yeah. Wow. Can't believe I'm not making a big deal out of this. Oppenheimer. Yeah, that Oppenheimer. From Christopher Nolan, Cillian Murphy, man. I mean, this was it. This was the movie everybody's talking about, and I know I have it at a 7. I've had a 7, and look, I really enjoyed this movie. It is a fucking phenomenal movie to watch in a theater. It's just on an epic scale that I feel like I can't even comprehend. I feel like I'm not built for this movie. Like, this movie's built different. I'm not built like that, you know? And I think the fact that there is a blockbuster film that has done so well, and I know people have mentioned this, but it's about a fucking scientist. It's a biopic about a scientist. And it's 3 hours long. But what people fail to mention is that it's a dialectical montage. The entire movie is a dialectical montage. And it's done this well. Is amazing. It's just, I didn't feel much from it. It didn't make me feel a lot, you know? That's what I look for in movies, you know? I look for them to make me feel something. Not manipulatively. I'm looking at you close. But I want them to make me feel something. And this movie didn't make me feel all that much. But I can appreciate it. So that's all I have to say about it. I'm moving on. Oppenheimer. Meet Raffle. Okay, wow, this video is going to be record long. Okay, we have Country Gold. This is from Mickey Reese. Mickey Reese, he's a Oklahoma filmmaker, somebody I might want to try to work with. We'll see about that. He's a dude who makes these really low budget movies. Some would call them no budget movies. And he's addicted to making movies. He just makes one after another. He doesn't care about its release. He just, once he's done with it, he moves on. But people make him release them theatrically and to festivals and stuff like that because they're continually better. He's made so many of them. And I just learned about him because of this movie. I just watched this on the fly. And I thought this was great. It is a strange satire, fable, bizarro thing where you have this Garth Brooks-esque character who is played by Mickey Reese, the director, who meets his hero, George Jones, in Nashville for a night out on the town. But then he discovers that George Jones is going to cryogenically freeze himself so he can like wake up in the future or something, but he's going to be gone for hundreds of years. And he's spending his last night with this Garth Brooks guy. And they just talk. They talk with a bunch of other people. Other people are just talking. They're telling stories. They're making conversation. And that's the movie. It was fucking fantastic. Moving on. We have Godland. This is a Danish film. No, wait, no, it's not. Boo! Boo! It's not Danish. Boo! It's Icelandic. It's an Icelandic film. And It entails a Danish priest when Denmark was colonizing Iceland. And this dude wants to make an epic journey to establish a town in this new little municipality. It's not, I wouldn't even call that. It's just like a collection of homes, you know, the beginnings of things. And he doesn't even need to make the journey like across the island, but he does it because he wants to. And he also wants to take pictures. And so this movie is framed and shot like something that would come out of one of those really old cameras. What do you call those? Like a digirograph or something. I don't know, something like that. And so the first half of the movie is like this journey that I'm talking about. And it is on the levels of Aguirre, The Wrath of God, and shit like that. Like, I don't know how the fuck they did some of this movie. Like, it's intense. This production looked like it was intense. And some of these scenes, I don't know how they pulled off. It's impressive. And it's absolutely gorgeous. Oh my God, this is like a treat for the senses. Not just a treat, it's like a journey, an actual journey for your senses. Just for that reason alone, this is worth the watch. Then it gets into this kind of drama between the Danish priest and the townsfolk. And it's a movie about colonialism. It's a movie about spirituality. It's a movie about a lot of things. But what I found really interesting is when I was doing research on Iceland and its origins and the colonization of it, I had always assumed Iceland had some like native peoples, because Greenland does. They have the Inuits, right? But apparently Iceland has never had like a native people. The closest thing they have to native people is when the Vikings came in the BC era, you know, and BC whatever. And so then they started living there. But it was kind of uncontacted for a long time. And so when Denmark started colonizing it, it had its own language. It had its own culture and whatnot. But what's really fascinating is like, those are your same ancestors. Like, imagine colonizing your own ancestors. I never knew that. And it's a really crazy thing to think of. And so you have this movie that's about colonialism, but I look at these two main characters, both representations of where they're from, and it's like, y'all are the same. It's really interesting. It's really fascinating. Check that out if that sounds interesting to you. Next is Joyland. This is a film from Pakistan. I don't think I've ever seen a movie from Pakistan, so for that alone, that was cool. But this movie, man, it goes to places I did not expect. It goes to places I've seen rarely in, Western cinema. This is about a guy who's married to a woman who I think he does love. Maybe not romantically, but they almost act like they're best friends in a way. And I feel like maybe they were forced to marry just because of society's expectations and this patriarchal structure of families. And he falls. First of all, he starts working for this dance troupe unbeknownst to his very strict conservative father. And so that alone is already like whoa to his father. But he falls in love with a trans woman. So this is a very interesting movie. I mean, it's Pakistan. You are in like full on very Islam based country, and to see this kind of story being told in that setting is very, very fascinating. And it's not that it just like that's why I like this movie. It's like, oh, it's because it's telling this story in this specific setting. No, I think the film goes to places thematically and revelations about how this type of societal structure can affect people. I think it's valuable for anybody to watch for those reasons, because what I got from this is like when you're kind of repressed from being your own person, you're almost like a child still in certain regards. So for the main character, like his sense of sexuality, his sense of his sense of sexuality, like he has no idea who he is. He hasn't explored it. He hasn't had a chance. And so he runs into problems with this affair that he's having with this trans girl, where the trans girl is upset with him because he's kind of being a little bit inappropriate, because he hasn't had a chance to explore. And you see, like, and even with his wife as well, because it explores her story as well. Like, these are people still kind of in adolescence in certain sense. And so I thought it was really, really well done. I thought it was really well done. I may like this film even more now thinking back about it than I have on my list, but I talked it up, so if that's enough to make you watch it, then I recommend it. Next is Call Me Chihiro. This is a very underseen movie that's on Netflix. I think it was like released on Netflix. And it's a Japanese film about a former sex worker, former prostitute, who you don't really know why she quit being a prostitute in the beginning. But it's just about her day-to-day life. Like, everybody likes her. She's a very likable person. She has a very jovial way of going about life. She really impacts people positively, both young and old. And then it gets into her past a little bit and explores maybe her darker sides. And this is like therapy. This is like a piece of therapy cinema. This reminded me a lot of Happy Go Lucky, which is one of my favorite films of all time. And if you remind me of Happy Go Lucky, you're doing something right. This is the Japanese Happy Go Lucky, from what I can tell. So, yeah, for that reason alone, go check this out. Call Me Chihiro. Next, we have an Indian film. We have a Bollywood film, baby. And I have no idea how to pronounce this. Rocky Aurani Ki Prem Kakani. Yes. This is pretty much India's counterpart to Barbie. I don't think it was designed to be that way. I don't think this was like, oh, we have to make a Indian version of Barbie. No, and that's not what this movie is at all. But in terms of a movie about, kind of like Joyland, about patriarchal society structures and just kind of gender norms and the way that we operate in families, in a family setting. This movie covers it all. Like, this is a very Bollywood movie. Don't get me wrong. It's corny. It's way too spectacle-y, which is a problem I usually have with Bollywood films. But I'm glad I watched this because it just covers all of the bases of like gender relations in our modern time. And I feel like this movie covers it better than filmmakers have here in the West. It does make a better, I guess, consensusly well put together. That's not a word. Well put together thesis, I should say, about these types of things than Barbie does. It does do a better job. I'm going to talk about Barbie soon, but if you like Barbie, if you like those type of things, if you like exploring gender norms and that kind of thing, check this movie out. It's fantastic. Yeah. And it's also fun if you just want to have a fun time. Next is Rye Lane. This is such a cute little movie. Coming from South London, one of my favorite places in the world. My favorite, not all of, but a lot of music that I like comes from South London. And I went to South London this year, and I even met a musician that I absolutely love there, and it was a bizarre experience. But anyway, this is just a romantic comedy that's set like within a day, or like maybe a couple days, but almost all of it takes place within a single day. And the dialogue is so well written. It's so charming. Another thing with gender norms too, like what this movie does is it takes the rom-com structure and it like switches how the male character is perceived and how the female character is perceived. Like, the male character is the one that's broken and is kind of irrational because of the way that he was treated by his previous relationship. And this girl that comes into his life is like kind of the domineering one. She's the one that is puts confidence back into him, but she also has secrets of her own, you know, that kind of thing. And it's just so well done. It's so stylistic. It really captures South London, Brixton specifically, so well. It really highlights what I saw in that part of the world. So well done. Yeah, check out Rye Lane. Great film. We have Master Gardener from Mr. Paul Schrader himself. Yep, Paulie's back. And he made a fucking wild movie. You expect nothing less from Mr. Schrader. I love Paul Schrader. I do. I really do. And he made a movie about... honestly, a lot of this film was a shock to me. From the very beginning, I didn't know anything about it when I saw it, and I like seeing movies that way. So I'm not going to talk about the plot. All I'm going to say is that this is another Paul Schrader banger. Maybe not as good as, Card Count or First Reform. Definitely not better than First Reform. But Paul Schrader is he's a fearless filmmaker. And he's one of those types of people that doesn't let the hyper awareness of our current society get to him, because he's old. He's a grumpy old man, and he doesn't give a fuck. But he's not a grumpy old man that is just uninformed and is just saying stuff that's ignorant. He's saying stuff that might be maybe a bit ignorant, but he's trying. He's trying his best. But he's also just fucking going for it. And that is something that I think we rarely see, and I want Paul Schrader to do it for as long as he can fucking breathe, and I hope that is forever, but I know it won't be. So, Paul Schrader, I love you. Next, we have Broker, the other film from Koreeda Hirokazu, which is actually from South Korea. So he made one film from Japan, his home country, and he made one film in South Korea, which is really interesting. This is a cute little movie with a lot to say. It's about this service that exists in South Korea where it's like, if there's any like unwanted children, they have like these little baby drop-off areas. I think that it exists in other places, but it's like a lot of their churches have that. It's like a 24-hour service. And these guys that work there, what they do instead of sending them into orphanages is they illegally like let them be adopted by families who can't like adopt for some reason. Like they want to trust these people, it's not like they're trying. What they're doing is technically human trafficking, but they're trying to give these kids a better life. That's the whole point of not putting them into orphanages, and stuff happens in this movie up to a point where it becomes this road movie about transporting this one kid from this place to that place. And the film really highlights the fact that when you grow up without parents, without parent figures, the people around you, your friends, they become your family. And when you have a group of people who don't have parental figures, your bond is so important, and so that's what this film highlighted. It's just a really heartfelt, well-made movie. I recommend it. And Broker. Next is Suzume. This is a fucking anime film, baby. The only other one I watched this year was The Boy and the Heron. I should watch more anime films, but this one came out at the beginning of the year. Plot-wise, I don't remember a whole lot. I just remember that a chair came to life, and he like possessed a chair. Somebody possessed a chair, right? And some shit goes down. The world's gonna end or whatever because of earthquakes, and to be honest with you, I don't really remember much about the plot. But that's the thing with me, is like, my rankings are based on feel. There's a little bit of objectivity, but most of it's subjective. And I could remember nothing about a plot, but I remember how a movie impacted me. And so that's why this movie is so high up on the list. And this movie did impact me. I remember it reaching a crescendo that I think made me cry. Because it explores such deep, transcendent type of themes here, and I just thought it was beautiful. I thought it was really well done. It's a fantastic road movie. You have two road movies back to back, Broker and Suzume, which are both fantastic road movies. Suzume, I think, is even the better one in terms of being a road movie. But yeah. Next, we have Emily. This is a completely overlooked film from this year about Emily Bronte, the author of Wuthering Heights. Ooh, scandalous. And the sister of Charlotte Bronte, the author of Jane Eyre. A very well-written family here. And this is just, it's not a biopic. It's just kind of a slice of life kind of movie. It's like what was going on in her life that kind of prompted her to write Wuthering Heights, And Emily and this family of very, intellectually rich and well-written sisters and influential father. She was always kind of the strange one, And if this movie does a lot of things right, I really like how strangely surreal it is at certain points, like sinisterly surreal. It's so subtle, but it works so perfectly, especially for this character and this story. And the main thing that just I really connected with this movie, and is the reason why it's this high up on the list, is the relationship that Emily has with her brother. It was just so real. It was so strangely reflective. And it both made me happy, it both saddened me. It did a lot of things, but it was real. It was very real. So I highly recommend this movie. Really underseen, really underappreciated. Great film, Emily. Next is Skinamarink. We are in the 8s. We're in the 8 out of 10s. The 4 stars, baby. Yep, we have Skinamarink. This is one of those cultural phenomenon type of movies that super low budget, and just by way of reputation, it made its way to fucking multiplexes, which is amazing. And yeah, I mean, this was a pretty experimental horror film. It captures kind of the feeling of being scared of the dark as a child, being home alone, scared of the dark, through the eyes of a child. Your imagination runs rampant, kind of thing. And it really puts you in those in that kind of mindset, I should say. And you probably know about this movie. You've probably seen it. And it's great. It's undeniably great. And people who say oh, this was boring, or this is so one note. Yeah, it's one note, but it's a note that's fucking great. Like, I could listen to this note for a while. So yeah, Skinamarink, just a really successfully well done experiment. And yeah. Next is Razanet. Talk about another successful experiment. This one nobody's seen. This is a commentary track movie. It's a commentary track of a movie that doesn't exist. It's a fake movie. And it's a commentary track with the director, who's a fake director. And he's being interviewed by a critic that doesn't exist. And at first, it's this really funny satire and really accurate satire on, more avant-garde, more artistic, more political filmmakers, contrasted with letterbox type users. Like, think of a Brad Pitt type of character whom I loathe. And yeah, it's like those two types of personalities coming together, and it's hilarious. But then the subject of the film, the fake film, really comes to fruition, and it turns really surreal. It turns into a little bit of horror, but also campy horror in a way. But it turns into this really strange comment on atrocity and just human suffering that borders the line of satire and, being genuine, like I haven't seen before. I can't recall a film ever making me feel the same way this film did. And it's just fucking fantastic. Yeah, Razanes, another incredible experiment that just deserves to be seen. Yeah, Razanes. Next, we have Anatomy of a Fall. This won the Palme d'Or, so this one's been talked up a lot. And I saw it back in October, I believe. Yeah, I think it was October, at the end of October. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. It's just a really compelling film, if anything. And language plays a huge part. It switches between French and I think maybe a little bit of German and English. And language plays a huge part in this movie. It's both a family drama, a court drama, a mystery, a thriller. It's all of the above. And it utilizes genre in ways that I haven't seen before. And I just thought it was fantastic. I don't think it's as good as people are proclaiming it to be, you know? But I think it's just a really well-written, well-done film. Next is Showing Up from Kelly Reichardt. Kelly's last project, First Cow, is loved by many, but I don't know, it's on a bit of a bigger scale than I would like for someone like Kelly, like with her style of filmmaking. Because her style of filmmaking, it's been deemed slow cinema, right? And, I mean, it existed before her, but she's kind of become the American queen of slow cinema. And I really like it when her films are small scale, like something like Wendy and Lucy or Old Joy, you know? And this really goes back to that small scale, and it's really funny. It's very relatable for anybody. It's beautiful. It's beautifully thrown together. Showing Up. It's just a great movie. No frills, you know? I still am upset by the fact that she hates Leaves of Grass, her debut film, because it's completely different in style. She hadn't found her style yet, and that's probably why she hates it. But I think, I don't know. I still love that movie. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that movie. But Showing Up, great. Still underseen. A24 fucking botched this release, so fuck them. Next is Inside. Not a lot of people saw this movie either. This came out in March, as stated clearly on the poster. It has your boy Willem Dafoe, and this is very much a COVID movie. He's a art thief, and he gets trapped in this fucking futuristic penthouse apartment. And like the owner is on vacation. And he's basically just fucked. He's completely fucked because he can't get out of this like tank of an apartment. And it's just kind of like, of course, this space is a character itself, you know? And it's one of the better COVID-esque movies, you know? I think being dramatic about being stuck inside all the time is just kind of dumb. But this doesn't necessarily have to be a COVID movie either, you know? This could apply to a lot of people outside of, you know, the COVID context. So I really connected with it. I thought it just was a solid film, and Willem Dafoe he's your boy. And the last movie on this very long series of CreamBetweens, it is your honorable mention to the future top 15. It is Of an Age, a film by Goran Stolivsky. Stolivsky. There we go, Stolivsky. This is a very intimate, small scale, but just really beautiful movie about this guy who is in adolescence, actually, I don't even really know how old he is. He's either like an older teenager or he's like a young adult. And he has this friend that is a woman, that is a female, that is just a fucking dick to him. And she's like fucking passed out drunk, like fucking hours away. And he has to get to this rehearsal, but she has to pick him up. He doesn't have a car. And like her brother, I think, is in town and he has a car. And so he like gets in this car with him, and the dude, our main character, is just like obsessed, like completely enamored with this brother character. Like he's fucking but it's a really sweet movie. A lot of people complain about the fact that it uses so much close-ups, and I disagree with that critique, because I mean, this is the most romantic, most intimate moment you can think of, you know? It deserves the close-ups. Like, close-ups are intimate. This movie is extremely intimate, you know? And yeah, I just really enjoyed it. Again, one of those no frills, just great film. And yeah, that's the list. We fucking did it. I'm so tired. Peace out, y'all. Top 15 coming up next.